Alright, and welcome back. In this video, going to be, as you see here, working on the right spar. Just a little bit. Wanted to show the one piece that was different than the left. But other than that, be working on the fuel tank. So what I wanted to show here is this is the attachment point for the aileron activating mechanism. I believe that the long arm there with the square cutout at the end, I believe that's where the aileron actuator is going to sit. But on the left spar, it was essentially just two of the simple brackets where it's the one hole basically, and this one, the different part is the longer arm. So I just want to make sure, showing that, and something to keep in mind when you're working on the spars, especially if you're working on the same time. Again, as the book points out several times, make sure that you're looking at the right part, because a lot of it is just mirrored, but there are steps here and there where it's a little bit different, like this one. So applied primer, not really necessary, but decided to apply it anyway, and then started torquing it in place. And again, if you look at the front matter, it talks about the torque specs for various bolts. I believe it's just before the electrical portion, at least for the RV14 kit. Now going through the rest of the spar, like I said, is identical to the left spar. I've now completed both the left and right spars, the preparation chapters, and we'll soon be working on the ribs. But for now, just setting them aside. So now I'm getting to finally starting to get the fuel tanks closed out. Here I'm going to be working on riveting the last portions of the inner rib. That's pretty much the only rivets I have left for this tank. Again, this is the left fuel tank. I started out working on both the left and right tanks together, trying to keep them pretty close to where each tank was, trying to keep them in about the same place, both left and right. But once I got into the point where I started to use Pro Seal, then I decided to just use one tank at a time, get it finished, and then I'll go back and work on the right tank. Well, now I'm at the point where I have done my first water test, and I'll talk to that a little bit later in this video here. And soon I'll be going back and finishing up the right tank. So I've put in probably somewhere, I would guess, between 150 and 200 hours into the tank so far, the left tank. I think the right tank will go by quite a bit faster. One, a lot of it's done already as far as the prep work, but two, having experience going through this time, it'll make the second time a little bit faster. So these rivets, they're the longer, I believe they're 4-6s if I recall correctly. So they're a little more difficult to set, especially with the angle that these are in place. And so I ended up, where I'm looking at the flashlight there, I ended up actually not setting it correctly at all. I want to say I got it halfway in, the head was sticking halfway up. It was not even close to correct. I'm not sure how I did that. So I ended up trying several things, but what ended up working is basically taking my die grinder and cutting off the head of it and then punching it out. Fortunately, it was only halfway set, so it was, once I got the shop head off of it, I was able to finally get it undone. So anyway, now I'm at the point to where I'm going to start working on filling it with water and testing it, and we'll see how it goes from there. And I'll start talking to that right about here. All right, as you can see behind me, I've got the fuel tank. About to start the water test. I'm going to fill it up with water to the very top and see if there's any leaks. I've got everything put in place so far as I can tell, and just a matter of putting the water in and coming back a day later and seeing if any parts on the towel are wet. So let's see what I can get in here and show.
But as you can see here, the fuel sending unit, I've got it temporarily in place with the rubber gasket. That will be removed later, but for this test that'll work just fine. I've got these holes are both taped up, and we'll see if that holds the water. Otherwise, I'll just have to do a test up to the bottom, but we'll see if this works. And as you can see, everything else on here is closed up. This is for the vent line, and that just comes along, as you can see, through the very top there, and then comes out here, and then the gas cap's in place. So everything looks like it should be sealed pretty well. We'll test this out and see how it goes.
So with that, begin filling the tank with water. Now, if everything goes right, it holds 25 gallons, so it'll be quite a bit of water. I've got to figure a way to get the water out. It's one of the things I figured out in this first attempt. Now, right about here, you notice that there's some water already escaping, and I finally noticed it as well. And I'll talk to that here.
So as is typical, first attempt's going to have some setbacks. Obviously, you got a bit of a leak in the sealant, so we'll drain this back out. And also there's some right here on this ledge. It looks like it's coming from right about here, more than likely. You can see the water on the ledge there. So we'll go back and put some more sealant on it and see what we can find.
And so I did test again. I don't think that I recorded it. But I filled it up to just below the attach plate there, and everything was fine. It wasn't until I got to that attach point, the prongs sticking out that you see, that it started leaking water. And there's a couple joints there where the instructions actually tell you to make sure you use quite a bit of sealant. There's a couple spots there where there's some openings, and I just didn't quite have enough sealant to cover those. So what I'm doing now is cleaning up the mating surfaces. One of the things I'd realized after watching a video from Jason Ellis on his RV10 is that I had used too much sealant, and more than likely when I went to attach this to the wing, it wouldn't line up. The sealant would be in the way to create a good mating surface. So I took his advice, and I took a wire wheel for my Dremel, or my air-driven tool there, and used that to get rid of the excess sealant, because it won't do too much damage to the aluminum skins themselves. So it worked really well. Creates a lot of dust, so that's why you see me using the air tool to kind of blow it down every once in a while. But now I'm just going through and trying to figure out exactly my plan of attack, because I'm going to open up a new thing of Pro Seal, and I don't want to waste any more than I have to. So I'm kind of going through, as I've explained in my fuel tank Pro Seal video, making sure I understand the steps I'm going to take, try to maximize my steps and maximize my use of the Pro Seal more than anything else, and get as much out of it as I can, especially since these are just a couple little spots. I don't want to waste an entire tube just to get this done. So what I ended up doing is applying Pro Seal to both the top and bottom at each of the corners, and just gooping the heck out of it, and being mindful not to overlap onto the mating surface, but to at least get a good seal in those corners. And then also figured, since I'm going to have a whole lot of Pro Seal left over, I decided I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of the other parts of the right tank. The inboard skin, inboard rib that has all of the attach points there where the vent tube bulkhead joint goes through, and all of that. The small parts that you put together, I went ahead and Pro Sealed those in place and Clecoed them, and then they'll be ready to rivet in place and then pro seal over the rivets. So also I decided to, so you see that I have the right skin out. I decided to go ahead and start working on the stiffeners on the right side, which is what you see me doing here. And again, using that pneumatic device makes it go by so much faster, and it's so much easier. Basically just lay out a line of pro seal, and then as you see me doing here, use the spatula devices that I got. I believe it was from Aircraft Spruce or Brown Tool, I forget which. But anyway, they're inexpensive, but just a pack of 3 various size spatulas, basically, for lack of a better term. And you use those to spread it out. It makes the process so much easier and cleaner. As you can see, this time around, I'm not even using gloves, and I barely got any pro seal on my hands, and mostly that was from when I put the rivets in place and did the back plate riveting like I'm doing here. So all in all, it makes it a lot easier and a lot faster to do it this way. And so as you see, put the pro seal in place, put the stiffener in place there, and then just back plate rivet, and just make sure it's over the back plate so you don't crease your skin, and go from there. Now I'm working in my garage. It's August in Phoenix. It was warm. It was probably just over 100 degrees, but there was no wind. So it's been a while since I've worked on my airplane, and this being Sunday, I finally had a chance. So I said, I'm going to take it. I don't care how warm it is out there. So that's what I'm doing in the garage today. Got through everything, and I'm putting the last stiffener in place here. And again, just spread it out evenly as you can. Put the rivets in place, and then use the back plate to rivet the stiffener in place. And again, making sure that you are careful not to overhang the back plate. But at least this way I was able to utilize all of the pro seal instead of just wasting a whole tube to make the repairs on the left tank. And as you see here, I'm going over each of the rivets, and also putting a bead of pro seal on the edges of the stiffeners here, just to make sure everything is closed up, not going to leak. We'll see how everything goes with the left tank, but once I'm going to let this pro seal sit overnight, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to go back in and test it with water again, and we'll see how it goes. So looking forward to getting that done. It'll be nice to finally be able to move on with the left tank. After this, I'll basically put the back plate in place, put the last couple pieces on, and then I'll do the pressure test. So I'm going to let this end here. Again, thanks for following. If you get a chance, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already.